is that I've noticed and I've really enjoyed is that solo travel has enabled me to feel young again and be connected to my youthful self when at the drop of a hat, I went off on adventures in places I'd never been before and meeting new people. I did that at 19, and then decades later, I did it again, and I felt rejuvenated and, came home feeling like my whole world had been expanded.
The thing I like about traveling alone is the freedom to be with my own thoughts and to explore in my own way without the struggle of somebody else's needs or ideas of what should be happening. Not all people travel well, and so you never know what you'd be dealing with, whether it be sickness or fears or moods or whatever. Traveling alone, you don't have to deal with any of that.
The challenges for me are just getting over my reluctance to travel, just getting out of my rut and not putting up all the hurdles. I think it helps to think about when you get to the destination and not worry about all the inconveniences that could happen along the way. And you're going because there's a promise of a door opening to a new way of life, meeting new people.
Some of those challenges, specifically in countries where the language isn't even based on the same script as ours, means that you have to navigate cities, large cities where there's no street signs that you can read, or menus if you want to eat in authentic places where no one speaks a single word of English. And so you're using lots of sign language and drawing pictures on napkins. And that challenge turns out to make it fun as well.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible.
I'm Lynn Winter-Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a local nonprofit providing older adults with support to help age in place.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're looking at solo travel. A solo traveler is someone who has chosen to travel alone rather than go with friends or family. Solo travel can be many things, but today we're concentrating on traveling alone. Not joining a group tour, but really doing it on your own, your way, your choice about where to go, how to get there, and how to plan your days. Many older adults dream of traveling when they retire, but something often gets in the way. Perhaps you lost your partner and traveling companion, or your friends have other obligations and just can't get away when you want to, or don't want to visit the same places you do. But you have the time, the money, the health, and the interest in traveling. The idea is to do things to please yourself rather than compromise in some way in doing things that please others. You plan, research, and create your own itinerary based on your own travel needs, desires, and budget.
We admit that traveling alone for the first time can be scary, but today's guest, Barbara Winard, has done it all. She's a traveler who's been on the road since 1970. After a 50-year career as a writer, she began to focus on writing for and about women who have long loved to travel and those who are just starting to explore. Barbara, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
We all know that traveling has many rewards for learning about the world and about ourselves, but traveling alone is different. Besides the opportunity to explore the world at your own pace and make connections in ways that traveling with others might not permit, what do you think are the major advantages of solo travel for people of any age?
Well, when I started traveling in the 1970s, I answered some of those same questions that you just expressed about finding it difficult to find people who wanted to go where I wanted to go, when I wanted to go, and how I wanted to go. And nobody really wanted to hop on a plane with me and fly to India for some reason. I could never understand that. So I decided I had to do it myself. And so all through the 1970s and 1980s into the 1990s, I usually traveled by myself. It felt wonderful to overcome obstacles, to do something by yourself, to go through the good times and the bad times. And, by the time you got home, you were thrilled with where you had gone, who you had met, and what you had accomplished. Um, I find it's true now. I'm going to be 77, and I feel the same way. I don't travel solo for long distances as I used to, but every time I go someplace, I feel like I'm still using what I learned when I was much younger about getting through things, even going to a new city, which I'll do on my own. Transportation, where to stay, talking to people that are, at the subway station or at the bus stop, whatever. It's always easier to do by yourself. And so I feel like I'm using what I learned back then in order to keep on traveling.
So, what do you think is the secret to your success of traveling alone?
I learned through the years that it could sometimes be miserable, but it's very serendipitous in that you can have a terrible day and wake up the next morning and the slate is completely clean. It's new. So if you are able to adapt to bad times and difficulties, it enables you to keep on going. And, not all trips are wonderful. I've written a lot of articles about travel disasters, which now seem very funny to me. I was a tour guide for teenage kids who all escaped me, and I was just praying they didn't get pregnant. I was hiking in Tibet and, chased by feral dogs. I was ill in Singapore and no one would help me get a cab. So there are all things can always go wrong. But if you hold on, they get much better and you appreciate them even more.
Those sound like major challenges that you faced.
I did, which is maybe why I don't want to travel quite as far nowadays. I think that things may change as you get older, although I know a lot of women my age who go very far by themselves and really enjoy it. And this woman I had dinner with the other night, she's older than I am. She's in her late 70s, and she just traveled to Berlin because she said she wanted to test herself. It's exhilarating to be moving, wherever you're going. I mean, I went to Washington, D.C. about a month ago and kind of navigated by myself. I hadn't been there in a while. It's exhilarating.
It sounds like you have to deal with loneliness and challenges, safety concerns when you're an older adult traveling alone. How do you advise people deal with that?
Well, as far as safety concerns, I mean, I lived in Manhattan for 20 years, so I always had eyes behind my head, and you have to as a traveler as well. I think it's important not to be afraid of everything. I mean, bad things happen, but if you're really prepared and, you've got your money inside your belt someplace, there's not that much to worry about. I mean, I've really not had a lot of problems. And in some ways, I find it easier to travel as an older woman. About 2 years ago, I was in India and I was in the town of Udaipur, and I was walking along the street and passed a group of young men on motorcycles, and they were trying to guess what country I was from. And I told them I was from the United States. And they said, "Oh, what do you think of it here?" We had this long conversation because I knew that they were just interested in what I had to say on how I saw the country. So I find in a lot of ways, I don't have to worry about being hassled because people are, I'm an older woman, and, most people are very friendly and do want to know just how I feel and aren't out for anything else.
So, it sounds like travel has changed a little bit for you over, or maybe a lot for you over the years. Assuming that when you were younger, maybe if you went up and talked to a male stranger, it would have been considered flirtatious, whereas now it's more you're on equal terms. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and maybe not on equal terms, but I feel that I'm not self-conscious about being a babe in any way. I mean, I'm a babe to my husband, I hope, but I don't feel like a babe, but I feel like I mean, going to the symphony by myself in New York a few nights ago, people just talk to you when you're a woman by yourself of a certain age. I'm not sure why. Maybe I, I have a feeling towards other people that is more welcoming than I did when I was younger. But travel certainly has changed. And I feel one of the ways in which it's changed is that there are a lot more alternatives to traveling by yourself very far and going through some of those obstacles. I mean, over the past 5 years, I've traveled with my daughter, with my husband, with friends, with small groups of women, with tour groups. I went on my first tour group 5 years ago, and I was very uncomfortable about doing it because I was a snob, like many solo travelers are, and I the first couple of days, my teeth hurt from smiling. I was kind of uncomfortable, and I felt like, who are these people wearing name tags, and why do I have to get up on and off this bus? I really was, you know, I was a snob. And I found that I really had a nice time. A lot of people I didn't know I had anything in common with, I had travel in common with them.
I just wanted to pick up on what you said because I notice when I travel, there's so few men who travel solo. Have you ever noticed that? And do you have any feelings of why that happens?
Um, well, I'm not going to diss men, but my husband doesn't like to travel far on a plane. He hates long plane rides. And I understand that, but put yourself out for 12 hours and it's over with. And then you have a whole country and a whole culture to learn about and experience. Um, I think, um, well, certainly on the group tours, it's usually couples or single women. I think single women are more up to go by themselves on a trip. Um, Maybe they feel more comfortable taking a chance like that. Maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for all men, but I know that it is true when you travel, especially solo, you meet a lot of women, and it's surprising how many women are on their own now. And women who are in their 70s who are just beginning to travel on their own as well.
I've talked to a couple of people recently, one who said, I don't want to worry about how I get from the airport to the hotel. I want a travel agent to help me. I want a tour guide to help me. Another said, if you travel alone, you should go first class. So there's a concierge at the hotel where you end up. What about that? What about the having to make all those little plans along the way?
Well, I have a trip planned for next month, and I'm taking my husband on his first tour. And I think it's going to be kind of a black comedy because I can't imagine him on a group tour either. But that's all taken care of, and that's great. But then we're going, just the two of us, and we're traveling around Puglia, Italy. And I've made all the arrangements already. I have everything booked. And it's kind of fun to book stuff on your own. It's kind of fun to choose where you want to go. I've been reading a lot of stuff online of recommendations of places to visit and what to see. There's always information if you do a little research, and then you use that information, you make your own decisions. I find having those decisions made makes it a lot easier, and it can be very pleasant, but it may not be exactly the things you wanted to do. And when you're traveling on your own and you make your own plans, sometimes they don't work out, sometimes they do. But in some ways, it's more exciting to challenge yourself personally that way.
How much research do you do before you get on the plane? You usually have your restaurants all lined up and art tours all lined up and
No,
museums?
not at all. Not at all. I definitely don't have any restaurants lined up. There are so many apps. Actually, I've written about travel apps as well. There are so many apps that you can access when you're abroad to let you know about restaurants that are nearby, to read reviews of restaurants by other travelers. But I think it's great to just, find a place that has great recommendations, but also to wander around and find a place that doesn't have a lot of tourists there, to find places on your own. The only thing I have scheduled for our trip to Italy is the mostly bed and breakfasts and flights. But even for train reservations, I guess it depends what time of the year you travel as well. I know I've begun to travel, I've always traveled off season, and I've begun to travel more in the winter because places are more available. I mean, if you travel in the middle of the summer, you better have reservations for everything. But I find it's nice, it's great to know where you're going to stay and find out, maybe there's a day tour you want to go on, maybe there's an audio tour you want to go on, and to talk to people wherever you go. Talk to people who are in the hotels or in the bed and breakfasts who run them, and to travelers along the way. That's another thing, is that when you travel alone, you talk to everybody, you force yourself to. And people, now they have Google Chat, so Google translation apps. So I mean, you can, I took a little bit of Italian, but I can probably get by. And there are many people who will, want to practice their English on you.
I just wanted to follow up on that a little bit because we touched on loneliness, and you're saying you're talking to people every place you go. But one person we talked to said your family and your friends are probably not going to be very supportive if you're going off on a solo trip by yourself. And so it's best not to call them when you're abroad and if you feel lonely, because they're not going to be supportive. Have you ever heard about that, or do you agree with that approach?
Well, when I first started traveling, I have to say I had the least supportive family. My parents came to the airport with me and said, I was probably 20. They said, if you're not back in 6 weeks, you'll never see me alive again, and my death will be on your hands. And I was amazed and, appalled. And I have to say, my mother made it to 100. So obviously she was interested in where I was going to go. And she made it. I didn't kill her by my travel. However, I have married somebody who's very supportive of my travel. And as a matter of fact, he started to go off on his own as well fairly recently. He'll go with a group of his old friends. And I think he's kind of inspired because I come back and I'm full of stories and, I have tales to tell. But I am definitely in touch with him when I travel. And I do, sometimes I've gotten very lonely when I've traveled by myself. And so you're lonely, you sit with a book, you wait for the daylight to come, and then you're out and you're doing things, and you kind of forget that you were lonely because you've got a lot to plan and a lot to do.
Do you recommend starting small, like with a weekend somewhere, and see how it feels to do solo travel before you schlep off to southern Italy or India by yourself?
Um, sure. I mean, it depends on what your taste is. I mean, I know people who have gone to retreats, and they've traveled on their own. I know people who have gone to writers' workshops in Mexico, people who have gone to yoga retreats. That's a big thing. I know people who have gone to yoga retreats in India who have never traveled there. And they plan on travel to get themselves someplace, and then they have a whole community of people to be with. Um, as I said, I was in Washington, D.C. Last month, and uh, it almost felt as if I were traveling in Europe because it's the same kind of thing you have to do wherever you go. Wherever you go, you try to find what the public transportation is. If you can get Ubers or something like that, if you can walk. I mean, I can't walk as much as I did when I was younger, so I have to rely more on transportation. But you kind of, you read about it, you look online. It's kind of using the same research methods if you're traveling to Chicago and if you're traveling to London or Germany or Italy. You do the same kind of things. But if you feel more comfortable going someplace nearby and trying it out on your own, that's a great idea.
So what about the emotion when you're sitting there, you say reading your book at night and think, oh, gee, if I had a friend with me, I'd have somebody to talk to. So the first time someone goes, I think they need to be prepared in some way for those emotions. Would you agree?
Yeah, I guess I was always the kind of person who liked doing stuff by myself, and I kind of raised my daughter that way as well. I told her if you can't find people to do things with that you find interesting, just do it yourself, and she did. It's something I think you can train yourself to do, and I think you can train yourself to do as you get older. I just would hope, and I've seen evidence of people being older and being able to try new things. I've met people in their 60s and 70s who have never traveled before and either have jumped into solo in a group as a way of starting or going off on their own solo. Um, I really believe that everybody is capable of change. And sometimes it takes, unfortunately, it takes the loss of a mate or the loss of friends or, a variety of things that may give you that extra push, or even talking to people who have gone or going online and communicating with people. There are many ways to inspire yourself to try to travel on your own.
What's the best way to learn about the country that you're going to so that you can fit in?
Well, one thing is that I know, a lot of people make fun of Facebook, but I find Facebook is wonderful for finding places that are just for, give you information about specific places. I'm on about 5 Puglia sites in Italy, which is made up of tourists from all over the world who have been there and are reporting in, who are there now, want information, who are planning trips. I do that for many places I travel to. I mean, if you go on Facebook and you type travel to India, you're going to come up with 30 different places that tell you as a solo traveler, as a female traveler, as a gay traveler, any group you're interested in getting information from to find out about their experiences or to find out about questions you haven't even thought of asking. It's all available there, as is research for a country, of course. With the internet, it's the easiest thing in the world to type a question in and get a lot of answers. You just have to learn how to get through those answers and decide which ones are good for you and which ones are real.
What you've learned about yourself by traveling, and did you feel it changed you in significant ways?
I am absolutely a product of having traveled. When I was little, I came from a small town. I had conservative religious parents who didn't want to go anywhere. They came to this country. That was their last travel. And I think that reading inspired me, and I find that's been the inspiration for a lot of women I know. I've asked what inspired them, and very often it's a movie or a book. Um, and somebody gave me a book about Mount Everest. And I was a little girl in Newark, New Jersey, dreaming of Mount Everest. And actually, I made it to Tibet and I made it to Nepal and I hiked around. And, it made me the person I am. And I recommend it for anybody.
Thank you very much for sharing your love of travel with our listeners. Our guest was solo traveler Barbara Winard.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight. Thank you.
Today on News You Can Use, let's talk about birthday cards. I recently called my cousin to wish her a happy birthday, and she told me she had received many cards that made fun of getting older. So I told her about the anti-aging birthday card campaigns and thought listeners would like to know about them as well. In 2020, Changing the Narrative, an initiative to end ageism, launched an anti-ageist birthday card campaign, calling for artists to design cards that countered the usual depressing narrative about getting older. The resulting designs disregard negative views and celebrate the joys of aging.
Why birthday cards? Well, birthday celebrations are one of the few common times we all think about and talk about age and aging. It's a time when we point out what it means to age and what our beliefs are about ourselves and others based on age. A few years ago, people who understood the negative connotations of the usual cards said they wanted more messages that are clever and fun without all the age bashing about sagging body parts and increasing irrelevance. So Changing the Narrative asked professional greeting card designers to come up with some messages that might make us smile or even laugh in celebration.
If you buy a birthday card for an older person, however, you don't often see images of people living long and fuller lives. According to these cards, we should feel bad about aging. Even if they seem funny, they're often mean as well. People have defended the worst of the ageist cards as just a joke or a little humor just between the sender and receiver. But we at Not Born Yesterday have a few thoughts about that.
Studies show that ageism has negative effects on our health and how long we live. We inflict these negative attitudes on ourselves because we've internalized the ageism surrounding us. We may joke about things between us, but birthday cards are not just private messages. They're on store shelves and online everywhere for prospective bosses, hiring managers, and others to see. The messages that surround us, whether we believe them or not, influence how we think. Some of our favorites from the new batch of cards include messages like "Count your blessings, not your candles," or "You don't look a day over fantastically fabulous." You can find more and order them on Changing the Narrative's website.
So next time you buy a birthday card for an older person, make it one you would like to receive. There are plenty of cards out there that make fun of age, so it's time to start balancing the scales and celebrate the positive.
And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks to our guest, Barbara Winard. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. And we thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All of these are free and help us to know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.